The end is present from the beginning. And it is in the end that everyone finds their destiny. And he was no exception. A king, after all, has many enemies. But contrary to what he thought, there was a light for him at the end of the tunnel. He was reborn in a common yet marvelous family. His mom was caring and had a wonderful smile. She was also a healer, but we will get to that later. His father had a bright, full personality and a huge heart. And these were some of the first things Arthur noticed in this new world. In his past life, Arthur had accomplished great feats, but nothing compared to the sensation he experienced when he crawled for the first time. Every night, he would utilize this new skill to venture to the library within his home and immerse himself in learning about the world around him. The continent of Decathan consisted of 3 kingdoms: Elenwar, the realm of the elves; Darth, the realm of the dwarves; and Sapin, the realm of humans, which also happened to be the most populated. This medieval world operated under a monarchical system and lagged behind technologically compared to Arthur's previous world, all due to one simple reason: magic. While in his previous life, warriors relied on a vital force called ki to enhance their strength through training, in this world, a similar concept was employed: mana. The 2 most common methods of utilizing mana were augmenting, which involved enhancing one's body with mana to become stronger and more agile, albeit within a limited range, and conjuring, which allowed individuals to manipulate their surroundings by harnessing mana. To achieve this, they needed to supplement their mana cores in order to form spells. As mentioned earlier, Alice was a deviant, specifically an emitter of a rare type, a healer. Usually, the mana core is formed during adolescence. However, since it resembled the ki center so much, Arthur came up with the idea of adapting a technique from his previous world to sense fragments of mana around him. It was working well until his mother interrupted him, and once again, his body betrayed him. Yes, one of the greatest kings in history had soiled his diaper without even noticing. His early years were peaceful. Art, as his mother called him, spent his days exploring more about Decathan, meditating, spending time with his parents, and training with his father. Reynold was an augmenter, a former adventurer and a very skilled swordsman who taught combat to Arthur since very early. One day, while Reynold and Alice were talking in the yard, the house suddenly exploded. He shielded her with his body, but they soon realized that Arthur was still inside. In a desperate frenzy, they began searching for him and stumbled upon an impossible scene. Their 3-year-old son had just awakened his mana core. The mana core begins as black due to the impurities present in oneself, and gradually becomes purer over time as these impurities are filtered out. The core stages are black, red, orange, yellow, silver, and white, with each stage having 3 shades: dark, solid, and light. The lighter the mana core, the more powerful it becomes. With Arthur's astonishing ability to manipulate mana at such a young age, his father decided it was best for him to have a more capable tutor, leading to a heated discussion with his mother, who strongly opposed the idea of separating from her little boy, since such tutors resided in Xyrus, a major city of Sapin. However, Arthur came up with the idea of everyone going there together, at least for a while, as his father had friends in the city. The adults agreed, and so the preparations for the journey began. It was finally time for Arthur to see what this world had to offer. Soon the day arrived, and his father's former adventurer party, the Twins Horn, came to assist with any potential issues that might arise during the journey. After Arthur politely introduced himself, Adam Crench, an energetic spearman, doubted whether he was truly Reynolds' son. Angela Rose, a voluptuous conjurer, suffocated Arthur with her attention for a while, stopping only when Durden Walker, a colossal dark-haired conjurer, took him away from her, allowing Arthur to finally breathe. The calm and serious Jasmine Flamesworth just looked at him with her red eyes. And Helen Shard, an archer, was the party last member Arthur met. After loading their belongings onto the wagons, their journey began deep into the forest. Seated by the campfire, everyone was curious about how Arthur managed to awaken his mana core at such a young age. As he spoke about it, Adam Crench invited him to a spar, while Reynold implied that Adam should take it easy with his son. Arthur reluctantly accepted the offer, as the spearman seemed too excited about the duel. The boy took the initiative, utilizing the skills acquired from countless battles in his past life to surprise Adam, dodging and attacking from unusual angles. However, in the end, his young body was unable to execute the moves properly, and he was thrown back by the spearman, who only too late realized he had exaggerated. Alice rushed to heal him, and Adam asked Reynold what kind of infernal training his son had gone through to be this good at this age. Arthur mentioned learning to fight by watching his father and reading, piquing Jasmine's immediate interest in learning the techniques from him, alongside Adam. The following days were filled with amusement, as Arthur spent them getting to know his fellow travelers better. Some were more outgoing than others, but the synergy among them was excellent. Jasmine presented him with a sword as a birthday gift, and also as a token of appreciation for the lessons he had been giving her. Arthur was genuinely surprised at how quickly she had learned the faint step technique. While his father was thoroughly enjoying himself with his friends at the waterfall, his mother kept to herself more often, as she frequently felt nauseous. However, as she assured him that it was nothing to worry about, the young lad didn't concern himself too much. But soon, Arthur's perfect little world crumbled, because a group of bandits had just ambushed their wagon.
"Don't hurt the women and the boy! Damaged goods! Always sell for less!"
shouted their leader. The disgusting feeling it caused in Arthur would forever remain etched in his memory. His mother was holding him firmly to her body, trying to shield his eyes from the scenes of gore around them. She didn't realize that he had a clear view of everything her arm didn't cover. The twin horns started fighting the bandits, showcasing an amazing teamwork. His father fought marvelously, but had to be saved by Helen from an enemy who sneaked behind him. Jasmine and Adam were also holding their own, taking down the attackers. However, Jasmine faced a tough opponent, a mage who fought with a whip. Being a dagger user, she struggled with the mage's longer range. Arthur tried to think of a way to help her when suddenly his father was violently thrown into their wagon. Arthur urged his mother to heal him, but something strange happened. She couldn't use her powers as usual. Reynold reassured them that his wounds weren't fatal. He told Arthur that once his mother finished her spell, he should protect her and escape while he fought the enemy's leader. But Arthur refused, arguing that he could fight alongside them. It was at this moment that Reynold told him why he should stay with his mother, no matter what happened next. "Your mom is pregnant," he whispered to the boy. Arthur accepted his mission without hesitation. The enemies realized that Alice was a healer, and their boss ordered that she should not be allowed to escape. Arthur and his mother started running, but a bandit jumped over her, and Adam quickly intervened to allow them to keep moving. An archer took a shot from afar, but Arthur managed to block the arrow, losing his sword in the process. The archer was astonished to see a young boy stopping his attack. Helen skillfully shot an arrow and took him down, allowing Arthur and his mother to continue their escape. After a moment, Arthur noticed something odd. The bandits were supposed to have 4 mages, but he could only see 3. Where was the last one? At the top of the mountain, Arthur spotted a mage casting a water spell towards them. He realized that he could stop the attack using his own magical powers, but his mother wouldn't be able to avoid it in time. Without any hesitations, he sacrificed himself to save her, hoping he wouldn't fall alone. Just before being hit, he infused his knife with a mana string and miraculously managed to strike the spellcaster. The desperate enemy tried to grab onto a rock to avoid falling, but failed. Durden tried to save him with his magical abilities, but he also failed. As he fell towards his destiny, Arthur's heart was torn in two. On one hand, he was happy that everyone would have more time to live, and his parents would soon have another child to cherish and love. Reynold, even if sometimes childish, would remain the father he never had in his past life, and Alice would always be the flawless angel he could never describe. But on the other hand, when he was a king, Arthur had never known the joy of having a sibling. It was one of his heart's deepest desires. Why was fate so cruel? To give an orphan such an amazing family, only to snatch it away so soon. When he woke, he realized he had returned to his past life. Servants bowed to him as he walked to the council chamber. He was a king in this world, where duels replaced wars and kings replaced armies. A society ruled by the council, and he was about to shock them with his decision. He was stepping down. He had enough of fame and glory and now wanted to live a more meaningful life. King Gray had retired. He closed his eyes and opened them again. This time he was lying next to a dead body and feeling a sharp pain all over. He had survived the fall, but soon he passed out. When he came back to his senses, he was starving. Arthur found some fruits nearby and ate them hungrily. Feeling a bit better, he dragged himself to the corpse and took its knife. Then he realized he had a big problem. He didn't know where he was. A smooth voice greeted him out of nowhere. He looked around, but saw no one. He thought it was the corpse, then a rabbit, but the voice said it came from somewhere else. He asked if the voice had saved him and who it belonged to. The voice said yes, it had saved him, and if he wanted to go home, he should come to its location. He hesitated, but decided to take the chance. He walked for a while, took a bath and ate a little on the way, while wondering why there were no mana beasts in this mana-rich land. He reached the cave and went inside. Arthur slipped and fell again, his second fall in a few days. In shock, he realized that the smooth voice that had lured him here actually came from a demonic creature with red eyes and a menacing appearance. It seemed happy to see him and thanked him for coming. He stayed silent, so it came closer, touched his hand gently and said it needed some time to create a portal for him to go home. The creature pointed to some shiny fruits and told him to eat. He examined them for a bit, and since it seemed safe, he did as told. While Arthur was thinking about his family, this colossal being unintentionally startled him, indicating another fruit for him to eat. While sitting next to it, he asked its name. Sylvia, she said in her silky voice that contrasted with her appearance. He asked her more questions: where they were, why she was alone, how she got hurt, and why she had saved him. She said they were at the edge of the Beast Glades and the Elves' Higher Forest, that he was the first person she let into her domain, and that she was here alone because she had no one else to be with. The more they talked, the more he liked her. She seemed to be a gentle soul trapped in a monstrous body. Sylvia also revealed that she had enemies chasing her because she possessed something they desired, and that the wound he saw was the result of one of her battles. Rising with some difficulty, Sylvia added that she saved him because she noticed his bravery and sacrifice in battle, or maybe simply because she felt lonely. Then the colossal demoness went to rest, promising to start preparing the portal when she woke up. Lastly, she assured him that Arthur's parents and friends were all alive and well, and he didn't need to worry. With teary eyes, the boy sincerely thanked her. The loneliness she felt was familiar to what he felt when during his time as a king, creating an immediate bond between them. Summoning a dimensional portal was no easy task, even for a powerful creature like Sylvia, so they spent several weeks in each other's company. Despite she never discussing her personal life, Arthur gradually came to know Sylvia better. Kind and with a huge heart, she was living proof that one should never judge a book by its cover. At the same time, she corrected him when he was wrong, like when he swore vengeance on the bandits who attacked him and his family. She told Arthur that he should live for more than just revenge and advised him to fill his heart with better motivations. Sylvia was always concerned about whether he had eaten, but at that moment, he noticed that her wound was bleeding even more. However, she assured him that it was normal and happened from time to time. Sylvia continued by asking how he managed to awaken his mana core at such a young age, since humans usually did it in their adolescence. He said his parents claimed he was a genius, and then she decided to teach him a technique that would allow him to absorb mana while fighting. Arthur was amazed at how effortlessly Sylvia could absorb mana as she moved. She explained that mana beasts could do it naturally, but humans couldn't because their mana cores awaken late. However, Arthur, having awakened his mana core early, should be able to do it with diligent practice, and that's exactly what he dedicated his next weeks to. When he went to tell her that he was starting to master the technique, he found Sylvia lying on the ground, bleeding heavily. Using all his strength, he turned her colossal body and realized that her wound was worse than before, while the portal was almost ready. That's when he understood what had happened. She had used her last remaining strength to help him return home. With tears in his eyes, he gently touched her, knowing that these would be their last moments together. She assured him that everything would be fine. Still, he uncontrollably wept for minutes on end. When he calmed down, she thanked him for keeping her company in her final moments and allowing her to use her last strength for good. Suddenly, her body disintegrated, and a majestic dragon took her place, teasingly asking Arthur if her name and voice now matched her appearance better. She revealed that to complete the portal, she needed to use her original form, which would attract her enemies. Because of that, they didn't have much time. She handed him a colorful egg and asked him to wrap it in her feather. Lastly, Sylvia touched his belly with her snout, causing him agony for a brief moment as she apologized. She quickly finished creating the portal and told him that in time, her actions today would make sense to him. It was at that moment that the cave trembled, and a demon appeared. In her final words, Sylvia told him 3 things. The portal would only take him close to where his parents were, and not exactly to their location. She had delayed the creation of the portal a bit, to spend more time with him. And lastly, she asked Arthur to call her grandmother, just once. He begged her to flee with him through the portal, but she gently pushed him into it unexpectedly. "Grandma," was all he managed to say while crossing the portal. She had been like family to him for the past few months, sharing not only her knowledge about the world, but her kindness. Suddenly, Sylvia's voice rang in his mind, but he soon realized it was just some kind of message. She apologized for not telling him much about what had happened, saying he was still too weak to make any difference in the real battles, even though he was a prodigy. She revealed that she had given him her will and that his future as a mage would depend on how well he could master this gift. She remembered him that he had a home to go back to, and his childhood was just beginning. She promised to speak to him again when his mana core had gone past the white stage. With a final farewell, she addressed him by a name and title he had never told anyone in this life before, King Grey. Arthur was left with more questions than answers, but now he had only one clear goal in his mind: to return to his family. He used the technique she had taught him and headed towards what he hoped was Sirius, leaping from tree to tree and wondering where Sylvia had sent him, hopefully somewhere near humans. After a while, he heard voices ahead. He crept closer to the group of people but soon sensed something was wrong. They were discussing how much they could get for an untouched elven child on the black market. Slave traders. He felt a surge of hatred as he realized what they were, but kept his cool. Arthur decided to follow them for the next few days, waiting for the right moment to strike, because attacking them all at once would be suicide. He spent his time training, planning and observing until the time finally came. First, he distracted the group's wolf elks, and then he conjured a mana blade, another technique adapted from his past life. Moving like a bolt, he descended from the tree and killed the first slave trader with a single blow. His gaze was filled with pure despise and hatred. Grabbing his knife, he headed towards his next prey. The fat drunkard Trash couldn't utter a sound as Arthur's blade cut his throat. However, the last 2 members of the group were now approaching the camp. He needed to be faster. The bald Trash, instead, had some reflexes, but nothing that a battle-hardened warrior like him couldn't eliminate quickly, even in such a young body. Or so he thought, as the bald man was still alive, and his friend had arrived. The long-haired man tried to surprise him but failed. And so they exchanged blows for a while. After a few moments, he managed to catch Arthur, and while he was distracted showing off, Arthur firstly exploded his hand, and then proceeded to cut his throat. Now, only one remained. The bald Trash begged for his life, and Arthur wondered how many dozens of slaves had made the same plea, or how many times the little girl in the carriage had made such a request. After eliminating the last filth in the area, Arthur approached the young elf, who just stared at him with terrified eyes. After talking for a while, he decided to escort her home. Since she didn't know how long such a journey would take, he quickly went to fetch some supplies. Inside the carriage, he found some clothes and brought them for the little girl to wear. She thanked him, and he smiled happily. Internally, Arthur hoped that the elves had a way for help him return home. During their journey, they had plenty of time to get to know each other. Her name was Tesha, and she had gotten lost in the forest, separated from her parents. The young elven girl was very curious and loved little animals like rabbits and small insects. Arthur took it upon himself to protect both of them from the dangers of the forest. At one point, she asked if it was true that human men were perverted and had multiple wives. He told her that not all men were like that, only some nobles. She explained that she would soon have a personal tutor to help her learn magic better, and mentioned how much she enjoys spending time with her grandfather. He implied that elf's educational system seemed interesting. One day she asked if the slave traders would bother her again. Without going into details, Arthur assured her that she would never see those men again in life. One night, she was afraid, and asked him to keep her company inside the tent. After teasing her a bit, he decided to spend the night with her, to calm her fears. Time passed, and they continued their journey deeper into the forest. Concern for his family clouded his mind, but he didn't let it show to Tesha. It wasn't her fault. The real problem was the constant pain in his mana core that he had started feeling since Sylvia had passed her will to him. Sometimes it was excruciating, and when Tesha noticed, she expressed concern, but he brushed it off, saying it was nothing. And that's how he lived his next days, with a pain that only grew stronger. He took care of both of them during the day, and in her own way, she tried to take care of him at night, even though he did everything to hide his condition. Eventually, she asked if she could call him Art, just like his family did. He said he would be honored if the esteemed Tesha Aerolith called him Art, teasing her. Slowly, despite the age difference, they grew closer, and after some more days, they finally arrived. After crossing the portal, Arthur found himself in a magnificent city. But the gazes of its inhabitants towards him seemed suspicious. It didn't take long for a group of royal guards to arrive and greet Princess Tesha, leaving Arthur perplexed and the girl embarrassed. King Algerwin and Queen Muriel arrived shortly after, their faces filled with concern and relief. While Virion, the former king who led the elves in the war against humans, observed everything from afar. As the family gathered, Arthur wondered if this would be his parents' reaction when they saw him. The king thanked the young man and asked him what had exactly happened, his gaze slightly threatening. Arthur began to explain but was interrupted by Tesha, who took him by the hand and led him inside the royal castle. Inside it, everyone gathered around a table, and in a very cordial manner, the young man began to describe the events that led him to find Tesha, eventually reaching the part where he encountered the slave traders. He didn't mention Sylvia. The king became furious and stated that obviously the humans were to blame, but Arthur politely corrected him, saying that slave traders were a profession, not a race, causing a reaction among the guards, which Virion restrained. The former king asked how the young man had convinced the slave traders to hand over his granddaughter, and Arthur replied that despite his young age, he was a skilled mage and had actually eliminated them. This time, one of the guards unsheathed his sword, but Virion's deadly gaze made him quiet down. Arthur got straight to the point and said that regardless of what they believed, Princess Tesha had returned home without a scratch, and he wished to do the same and head to Sapin and his family, leaving the little girl saddened by his imminent departure. The king stated that regardless of what had happened in the past, Arthur deserved a reward for saving Tesha. Unfortunately, the portal connecting the kingdoms of Sapin and Eleanor would only function again in 5 years, but the next day, a group of guards would accompany the young man back home. Arthur thanked them, and then went to take a bath. Once again, the pain in his core afflicted him, and he lamented not knowing what to do. Tesha came to visit him and asked why he had been so cold in front of her parents. Arthur said that was how people spoke to royalty, but she was clearly saddened by his inevitable departure. To cheer her up, he asked her to show him the castle. She took him to a garden, her favorite place. As they talked, someone attacked them from behind, but Arthur immediately caught the knife in midair and counterattacked, only to discover that the assailant was Tesha's grandfather, and the knife was fake. Virion was testing him and continued by saying that although his mana usage was barely acceptable, he believed that Arthur had killed the slave traders. Tesha asked him to stop teasing her friend, but Virion replied by giving a wooden sword to Arthur and asking him to show what he could do. The boy accepted without hesitation. Immediately, Arthur attacked Virion's neck, bringing a smile to the former king's face, who easily defended himself. The battle continued with Virion dodging the next strike and aiming for Arthur's neck. The boy was able to block it with some difficulty. Arthur also evaded the following punch, but not the elbow that came next. Despite minimizing his mana consumption and moving as precisely as possible, Arthur realized that Virion was too fast and too strong. The former king tripped him, but using his arm, Arthur catapulted himself into the air and attacked Virion's face as the old man threw him away. Tesha immediately went to help her friend, and Virion smiled proudly while touching his injured forehead. The little girl pleaded for him to go easy on Arthur, but the former king stated that if he did, the boy would have bullied him. Arthur thanked the honorable elder for his words, and Virion invited him to become his disciple. At first, Arthur hesitated. He was a human, and the recent history between the two races had been anything but friendly. Moreover, his parents didn't even know he was alive. With a cute band-aid adorning his forehead, Virion assured him that no one in the kingdom would dictate who could be his disciple. He also claimed to know a way for Arthur to communicate with his family. Furthermore, Virion mentioned that during their brief duel, he had noticed something wrong with Arthur's mana core, a disturbance caused by a beast's will. The elder went on to explain that mana beasts were classified from Class E to Class SS, and the stronger the beast was, the more challenging it was to assimilate its will, especially for a beginner mage. If Arthur didn't quickly learn to control the will given to him by the beast, his body would deteriorate from within in the coming months. The next day, Arthur overheard a conversation between the king and Virion. The monarch was reluctant to let Arthur stay due to the recent bloody history between the elves and humans. However, the elder informed him that he had made his decision and instructed him to spread the news throughout the kingdom that Arthur was now under his direct guidance. Inside the carriage, Virion revealed that Tesha had woken up early that day just to accompany them. He explained that she had a lonely childhood, as many people wanted to take advantage of her social position. However, Arthur had managed to bring happiness to her face, for which Virion was grateful. Soon, they arrived at an intriguing house that seemed to have 4 eyes. Virion kicked the door and yelled at the old witch living inside to let him in. An old lady emerged, stating to the old man that she was not deaf. The elder introduced her as Rinian Darkassin, a friend and powerful deviant, and Arthur greeted her politely. Rinian was a diviner who could see into people's futures. She claimed to see clearly that Arthur was special, although she couldn't grasp his past or future for some reason. Placing her hand on his head, she asked him to think about his parents, concentrate on their image, and then look at the water in front of him. After a moment, Arthur was able to see his family. His mother had a prominent belly, and his father had grown a beard he had never seen before. Reynold dropped his spoon upon hearing his son's voice, deeply moved. Arthur explained what had happened afterward, avoiding many details about his time with Sylvia. His parents informed him that they had decided to live in Xerius, where his father now worked as the chief guard for an influential local family. The joy of the Lewins was palpable, despite the distance, and they expressed it through a mixture of smiles and tears. Arthur also explained that he needed to reside in the Elven Kingdom for a while to treat an illness, but it was nothing serious, and they would be together soon. With an "I love you," the Lewins said their temporary goodbyes, with the promise to talk more in the coming days. Looking deeply into Virion's eyes, Arthur declared that he was ready for the training. Back at the castle, the king and queen apologized for hesitating to accept the presence of the young man among them. They thanked him once again for saving their daughter. Tesha took the opportunity to ask for permission to show Arthur around the city, and after getting ready, they set off. Suddenly, a young blonde-haired elf bumped into Arthur and exclaimed that human germs had now contaminated his clothes. He also made it clear that just because Virion had taken pity on Arthur, it didn't mean he was welcome. Fereth Ivysaur, on the other hand, offered to escort the Princess Tesha home. Taken aback, Arthur asked if he was the great Fereth Ivysaur, mockingly provoking the young elf and fueling his anger. With a sarcastic bow, Arthur greeted the young prodigy from the Ivysaur house and began to walk away. Enraged, the young elf challenged Arthur to a duel in honor of his family. Tesha tried to dissuade him, knowing full well where this would lead, but the young elf refused to listen. The duel commenced and ended within seconds, with the young elf's body sprawled on the ground after taking a punch from Arthur. The rest of their tour proceeded peacefully as Tesha showed Arthur her favorite places in the city. The following day, Virion explained to Arthur that the training he expected him to undergo would be far from easy. Assimilating the will of a mana-beast would cause a pain akin to immersing one's body in boiling water. Arthur would live for a long time in an unfamiliar kingdom without the support of his family, and his days would be filled with pain and sacrifice. However, if he endured the training, the rewards would be immense. In response, the young man eagerly expressed his anticipation for starting to learn everything Virion could teach him, and to know what this amazing world would offer him in the upcoming years.